Hi, my name is Ethan Ravel. I'm doing this for my senior thesis project for the Integrative Studies 4350 class, and my project is about the effects of smartphones on the socialization of youth ages 14 through 20. And it's kind of a long title, but let's get started. Well, as y'all are probably very aware of, smartphones are a very new development. If you said the phrase smartphone maybe 10 years ago, no one would know what it is. All they know of is cell phone. And we have Blackberries, flip phones, stuff like that. Technology has advanced so rapidly in the past 10 years that what we have nowadays 10 years ago would seem unfathomable. And no generation knows smartphones better than youth. It's because they grew up with smartphones. That's what was coming about when they were growing up. And a source I found kind of spoke to this. Youth are the first generation to have grown up with mobile technology, and thus provide a unique cohort to monitor the emergence of new patterns of mobile phone behavior. And that's from Walsh's study. Now, when we talk about smartphones, there's a big debate over, okay, are smartphones a positive influence in the child's life, or are they a negative influence in the child's life? And the opinion on this topic really depends on the generation of the person who's speaking. If you talk about the older generation, lots of times they may see this technology as bad because it's different and because it's seemingly taking kids into their own little world in these smartphones. But at the same time, some of the people who grew up in this technological age, they see its benefits. And this does not hold true for everyone, but it's kind of it's the trend, it's the pattern. Having looked at all this history about smartphones and how they've just now come to a prevalence in society, the research question that I looked at is, do smartphones or cell phones enhance socialization among high school teenagers? If they do, how? So my emphasis of this paper was to look at how the presence of smartphones impacts how kids relate to each other. Now, of course, this being an interdisciplinary class, we had to look at, is this research question, is this problem something that can be covered with just one discipline, or is it truly interdisciplinary? This topic I found to be far too broad and far too detailed to be studied by only one discipline, because you have so many aspects to look at. You have the mind of the child with the smartphone, the context, the social context the child finds himself in. Um, so many different disciplines have their hands in this issue. So by using the REPCO steps of interdisciplinary research, we can eventually find a more integrative solution as to the question, are smartphones beneficial for a high school teenager's socialization? This study used the disciplines of psychology, sociology, and communication. And based off of those three main disciplines, that's where I got my answer from. So let's start here on why this topic is of importance in the first place. It's really important to understand why this topic is even important to begin with. Why should we care about it? Well, a quote from the study by Morrill in 2013 says, the phenomenal increase in cell phone ownership among adolescents and young adults has motivated researchers to ponder how these technologies might influence social skills, social interaction, and social activity. And that's the quote. Now, basically what this is saying is that smartphones have invaded every aspect of life, and they are so integral in how a child is socialized. So everyone, from parents to teachers, and even kids themselves, really need to know how these smartphones are affecting the kids. That way they can best adjust to the changes that are going on around them. So let's look at why kids are drawn to smartphones in the first place. And a lot of this has to do with the sociology discipline that I mentioned earlier. There are social standards that young adults, adolescents feel pressure to meet. We were all in high school at one time, and peer pressure is pretty incredible at that stage of life. Now, one of these pressures, one of these stigmas, is to have a cell phone, and not just to have a cell phone, but to have a smartphone. Young adults are on their cell phones primarily for two reasons, and that is to strengthen relationships or to engage in social activities. So once again, we see this whole concept of sociology infiltrating this topic. We have the social stigma that you need to have a cell phone to be properly integrated into a classroom setting. This is no different than the socialization that occurred from kids of previous generations, but just in the past, instead of getting on their smartphones and typing up a text, they would call a landline. They would go actually meet somewhere after class just to hang out. This is the same thing. Kids want to socialize. The only thing that's changed is the methods. Now, this speaks more to the psychology aspect of this problem, or this issue we're talking about. Having a smartphone helps a child to gain independence from his or her parents. Now, this process of a teenager gaining independence isn't something new. We have this all the time. In the past, you have coming of age ceremonies, rituals. Um, just all along the while a child is a teenager, they are becoming more and more independent. A smartphone or a cell phone is a great tool for that child to gain independence. And some people may see it as a bad thing that we're making them grow up too early, and we'll address that in a little bit. We do have this quote here from a name that's hard to pronounce. It says, rapid adoption of mobile phones has speeded up teenagers' socialization process toward their peers as it has enhanced their sense of independence from the familial environment. Now, psychologically speaking, this is so important for a child. They think, look, my parents trust me enough to give me this smartphone. I am gaining independence. I'm becoming an adult. This is an integral step in a child becoming an adult. That's why it's so important psychologically. Now, we talked earlier about how some people may feel that giving a child a smartphone or a cell phone to increase their independence may actually be a negative thing for parents, may be making them grow up too soon. This is kind of countered in the research that I saw. Even though a cell phone enhances a child's independence, parents can use this smartphone as a monitoring device. There are some smartphones that even allow you to put a GPS tracker in a child's phone. That way you know where they are at all moments. And parents can still call their kids at any time to ask them questions or to just communicate with them. Now, of course, the child has to actually answer the parent's call or text. And that terrifying feeling when you were a teenager and you look at your phone and there's 5 missed calls and mom, 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 and you're like, oh no, I'm in trouble. But that's the thing, it's this socialization process for a child to get a smartphone does not make them just this independent person that's no longer under the control of their parents. Parents can still use these smartphones as a monitoring device, and they can still stay in touch with their kids very easily. Again, just like we talked about, a child views a smartphone as a step toward independence. This is, as we mentioned, a very important step psychologically in their maturity process. Now, this is also a win-win situation for the parents as well because they see it as a way to stay involved with their kids. In the past, you just had to tell your child, go out, have fun, be safe, be back by midnight. And then you have no clue what's happening to them until they're back at midnight or until they're not back at midnight. Kids also, they gain this independence, which, as we mentioned, is crucial for the maturing process. And parents get to stay in touch with their children. It's a win-win. Aside from simply the psychological, sociological, and communication advantages that smartphones give teenagers, can also look at the future they have in schools. Some schools have taken the plunge into integrating cell phones or smartphones into their classroom learning. with surprising and exciting results. Now, these devices can allow a teacher to teach even from a distance, and they're becoming very popular. Smartphones are very, very handy tools in schools. Students with these devices can go any place and anywhere to get their information learning from the palms of their hands. And with the entire workforce moving towards smartphone technology, why should kids in school not be taught to use these phones for education and increasing social boundaries? So with all of this research done, we go back to our original research question. Do cell phones, smartphones, benefit a child's socialization? So we have to ask, is it a good thing? Cell phones are primarily used for communication with peers. This is no different than the old days when one would pick up a landline to talk to a friend. The benefit to this is that being close to a friend physically is no longer that important of a factor. If a best friend moves away, even states away, that relationship can still flourish through use of a smartphone. So why else are smartphones beneficial? Well, the second reason that was found in the research for communication through smartphones was to collaborate with friends about future plans. Plans can now be made on the go without a whole lot of significant pre-planning. In addition, plans can be altered or adjusted kind of in late notice, and the other members of the party can find out about it quickly, so no one's left out of the loop. This quote here kind of sums up what I've been studying about cell phones and smartphones and their benefit on teenagers. Mobile technology, and in particular, text messaging, provide yet another means for adolescents and young adults to communicate with friends and significant others in the pursuit of social and psychological development tasks that characterize this phase of lifespan development. Basically, kids are going to try to develop these social contacts anyway. Smartphones is just another way for them to do it. Let's take one more look at our three disciplines that we are using to develop our research. How does psychology show that smartphones are beneficial? Well, psychology has shown there is a mental aspect behind owning a cell phone. This is the inborn desire of each child to create their own peer groups and to eventually move away from their parents. Children see smartphones as a critical step towards this independence, and parents can keep track of their kids as well, which is a plus. Now, how does sociology show that cell phones, smartphones in particular, are beneficial to these teenagers? Sociolog- that's long. Sociologists will be quick to point out there is a main desire behind having a cell phone, and that desire is to be like everyone else. Peer pressure to conform to the group may force a child into owning or wanting a smartphone, and not having a smartphone device may leave a child feeling kind of left out of the loop, kind of behind. And for our last discipline, how does communication show this? Okay, the main reason a child will communicate over a cell phone is to socialize with his or her friends. So communication is an important aspect in discovering why teenagers benefit from having a cell phone. Research has shown that children use smartphones primarily to talk to or communicate with friends and to make plans for future. In conclusion, I have discovered in my project that cell phones, smartphones in particular, are a necessary part of this current time and age. It makes sense that those who are resistant to their impact will eventually have to accept them as part of society because they are becoming more and more prevalent. Cell phones have become the primary means of socialization, and because that's true, they are a positive factor in teenagers' socialization process. So to answer our question, yes, smartphones are a positive influence in a child's life. But more research will need to be done as the times change. Technology never stops changing, and what's true today may be totally wrong in just a year or two. Smartphones, however, at the current time, are very beneficial to a child's socialization process. Well, that's my presentation, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Good luck over the summer. Have fun.